Welcome everyone to Gamer Meld. Today, the RTX 3080 Ti and entire RTX 3000 mobile series were spotted, a leaked benchmark on Nvidia's mobile variant, Ryzen owners get a huge performance boost in Cyberpunk from this fix, and Intel's 11900K is a massive power hog. But first, if you're looking at getting parts for your next PC, check out kit.co/gamermeld, where I go over hardware suggestions based on component type. I also give a short description for why you may or may not want a certain part. Not only that, but when you follow the links, you're helping the channel out. And this is fairly early, so I'll be adding a ton more in the near future, as well as keeping it updated as new hardware comes out. So visit kit.co/gamermeld today. Okay, it's news time, and first up for today, it looks like Nvidia is hard at work bringing more and more GPUs to the market. This time, we're seeing yet more proof of their RTX 3080 Ti, which at this point is essentially guaranteed, and it makes sense. Remember that Nvidia originally had plans for a 20GB 3080 with the same amount of cores as the 3080, but those plans were scrapped. The 20GB 3080 Ti, on the other hand, has the same cores as the 3090. Basically, this was likely set after AMD announced their much cheaper 6900 XT. Either way, this time the GPU was spotted in AIDA64, where it was updated with support for the card, which means it's likely coming soon, and I'll have a link to that in the description for when that happens. Not only that, but Nvidia's entire RTX 3000 mobile lineup was spotted as well. As you can see, they have listed the Mobile 3060, Mobile 3070, a Max-Q variant, as well as a 16GB 3070. And yes, we're talking a 16GB mobile 3070. Basically, it's clear that Nvidia is coming back hard with much higher memory cards. And honestly, I think we'll see more desktop variants with more memory soon as well. And speaking of Nvidia's upcoming mobile variants, we have one of the first benchmarks from their mobile lineup. This benchmark was done in V-Ray, and you can see it's of the mobile RTX 3070. As for how well it did, the card scored 1394, which really is quite good. In fact, the desktop 3060 Ti only beats it by 8%. Not only that, but it just barely lost to the 2080 Ti, though of course Turing isn't as good in this benchmark given it's using first-gen ray tracing cores. With that said, given its performance, it looks like Nvidia won't be including the same processors as their desktop variants. Then again, as Video Cards points out, that makes sense. I mean, the 3080 is an absolute monster. Still, that's a seriously impressive mobile GPU. Next up for today, while Cyberpunk 2077 seems to be pretty terrible on consoles, especially base variants, the PC version on the other hand is faring much better. Granted, even this variant isn't without numerous bugs splattered across the entire game, but it's at least playable. Then again, if you're running it on a Ryzen CPU, you may have noticed the performance isn't nearly as good as you would expect. Well, fairly quickly after launch, users found out that Cyberpunk seems to ignore multi-threading on Ryzen-based systems, meaning it only uses the physical cores on your CPU. You can see this illustrated in Windows Task Manager, where the game is clearly only using 16 cores of the 32 threads in AMD's 5950X. This more or less shows that the game was likely optimized for Intel CPUs first, but fret not, as there is a bit of a fix. The workaround was originally posted by Unhinged Dork, with the step-by-step guide later posted by Chaos XK, which I'll have linked in the description. Of course, make sure you know what you're doing, because if you make a mistake without a copy of the files, you could have an issue. Either way, from the comments, it looks like performance gets a pretty big boost, and you can see that Cyberpunk is clearly using all the cores now, so hopefully CD Projekt Red can issue their own fix fairly soon. And lastly for today, we have the full specs of Rocket Lake's i9 11900K. As I've said in the past, Intel's Rocket Lake is still on the 14nm process, but it uses a new backported core. The issue is that Intel is dialing back on the cores from 10 to 8, and I think we may now be seeing why. The story was originally leaked on Twitter by the user David Beepo and later reported by Video Cards. Another user later detailed the rest of the lineup in a table, but it does seem one thing is wrong. Either way, when it comes to the 11900K, we can see that it does come with 8 cores and 16 threads, as well as a base clock of 3.5 GHz, which we recently saw in an Ashes of the Singularity benchmark. Of course, with that, we only saw the base clock. Here, according to the leak, the boost clock comes in at a very impressive 5.3 GHz and an all-core boost of 4.8. Now, we also saw a benchmark from another 8-core 16-thread part, which actually showed good performance numbers in Geekbench. But that was only boosted to 5 GHz, which means it was likely the 11700K. And given the performance numbers were so close to AMD's 5800X, it looks like the 11900K may be able to beat AMD's 8-core Ryzen part, at least in gaming. And that seriously is impressive, given Intel is still on their 14nm process. The issue really seems to come down to power draw. As you can see, the 11900K gets up to a whopping 250 watts. And this is an 8-core CPU. I mean, even under full load, AMD's 16-core CPU is still under 250 watts. Of course, you can see that the P1 state remains at 125 watts, which is likely why Intel lowered the base clock. Basically, the main issue still plaguing Intel while remaining on such an old process is power draw. With that said, obviously most gamers don't care about that, and this has some very real potential to take back the gaming crown. Of course, multi-core will certainly remain in AMD's hands, and I don't think we'll see much of a difference in gaming either. As always, time will tell. So while that does it for today, are you kinda disappointed by Cyberpunk's performance, or are you just excited for Intel's 11th gen CPUs? Let me know down in the comments below, and if you liked the video, please subscribe. And as always, have a great day!